Copyright disclaimer. Under Title 17 U.S.C. Section 107, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. Okay, guys. More insanity from Scientology parent. Dated March 23rd, 2017. I assume he's wearing a Superman shirt because he's going to get his superpowers. Strategically, there's 2 American flags in the back. You got to wonder what that's about. And then, in my opinion, these children are the sacrificial lambs, whether dad knows it or not. Ask a Scientologist. 14 student questions answered about Scientology. A student asking the following questions for a school presentation. Isn't that great, you guys? Always got to have access to the children. As a preface to my answers to the questions, asked my name is Tad. Listen to this. I am a father of 3. A second-generation Scientologist. So some of you second gens might know this guy, Tad. And am a systems engineer for an internet service provider. Does that mean he was allowed to go to college, you guys? I don't know. I don't think so. I've been in and around Scientology nearly my entire life. Great parents. Kids are cute. My answers to the questions follow. And, let's just be honest. Don't you guys want to know who's asking these questions? Sorry about my voice. I first started taking Scientology courses when I was about 9. Just so everyone's clear on this, that means he had no free will. In case anybody's confused. Nobody knows what crimes were committed. This child, when he was a child, he had no free will. 0. And by age 10, 11 or so, I did really consider myself a Scientologist. You didn't have a choice. You did not have a choice. So that would put it at 30 years or so that I've been involved. My mother and father became Scientologists a few years before I was born. Wish I knew what year that was. The bits of Scientology terminology, philosophy thrown around in daily life, had my interest. You guys, if you're noticing that this resembles a success story, it's because it kind of is. You're not allowed to say anything negative about Scientology. And you know who signs off on it? LAPD signs off on it. The government signs off on it. Various police forces like Clearwater, Hemet Police. People that are supposed to actually enforce laws, actually fight crime instead of committing crimes like the LAPD is so good at. Yeah, isn't that wonderful? Philosophy thrown around in daily life had my interest. And on my own volition, at around age 9, at his own volition, you guys. Because you know why? Children are adults in small bodies. Isn't that fantastic? Just out there as prey for predators, for sexual abuse, physical abuse, neglect, corporal punishment, child labor, all apparently against the laws in the United States and various countries, but yet nobody's doing anything about it. They're going and busting other cults up, but they're not touching Scientology for some bizarre, strange reason. Could that be 33 code? Which was unfortunately for me a good 2-hour drive from my house in Maine. Do they make you drive too at 9? At the time, I had seen my parents taking courses at the church, and in many cases gaining something valuable from it. Of course. This is what indoctrination looks like. I naturally asked if I could take a course too. Listen to this, you guys. Listen. A child at 9 years old that has not had any opportunity to be exposed to anything else besides Scientology, supposedly asked to take a course, right? If I could take a course too, and enrolled onto a course communication course, because you know spell check. At the end of that communication course, I honestly felt I had learned something. Gosh, all this, you guys, he got at 9 years old. I wonder if he was ever put in ethics handlings, forced to do KRs to make amends. Was he told that he was interbulating? Did he ever get an interbulation order? Inquiring minds want to know. I had figured out how to communicate better, as a 9-year-old. I had figured out how to communicate better. I figured out that I could get my point across clearly. Right, like these children are allowed anything. I understood why people didn't like being interrupted. Isn't that great, you guys? Isn't that wonderful to not allow a child to ask questions or to speak freely? Make them obey like a dog? It's kind of like that old saying, children are to be seen, not heard. I never did like that one. And that it was enjoyable for both parties, like parents and children, when you'd acknowledge when you understood what they said. Like a dog. You know how you make a dog sit, ubu, sit, ubu, sit? Kind of like that. I continued my studies after that, picking up things sometimes, tidbits, sometimes much more significant than tidbits. Imagine he's 30-something years old and he remembers all this from his being 9 years old, right? There's no trauma there, of course. Which made it easier to live in the world. Well, you guys don't even really live in the world. You isolate yourself from everyone. And that's not this guy's fault. I'm just commenting. And helped explain the things I saw around me. Like a locational. I also gained a firm footing in morality. Can you imagine this, you guys? The sad part about it is they really believe this. And I think there's some good people in Scientology. I don't think everyone's horrible. They didn't even have a choice. Never were given a free choice. That there is a moral code. Oh, you guys, how many times have we heard this one? I guess the moral code allows children to get raped then. And I'm not blaming that on this guy. I'm just saying they keep pushing this. They got a moral code. So I guess Miscavige is totally fine with having children be raped. And I'm very sus about Miscavige, too, at this point. I don't care how many people are like, oh, he's a good guy. Please, please. That there is a moral code that is good to live by, because it makes all human interactions smoother. It's just sad. You can just hear the indoctrination oozing out of them. It's so sad. If you want to get answers to the same question from a number of other Scientologists, I got around 25 friends to answer the question of how they got involved in Scientology here. Well, how about they were just born into it and nobody ever had a choice? How about that? Which should give you some other perspectives. 2, why are all the churches in Scientology hierarchy legally separate? They're trying to tell us that a student is asking these questions. You know, the student that has no name? It's probably another Scientologist. Because you guys, how many children do you... I mean, you know, some kids are pretty bright. I mean, it seems like an odd thing for a child to ask, but some kids are pretty bright, so maybe. It's a question that has a complex set of answers. I'll do my best, though. Well, we all know it's just so you don't have to pay taxes. Come on. Each Church of Scientology is its own separate organization with its own board of directors, like Jan Eastgate. You know, the one who covered up a little girl being sexually abused. Went to jail for a little while and then, you know, like it was nothing, just went straight back to her job. Yeah, like that. As each church is itself responsible for proper delivery, listen to this talk, of Dianetics or Scientology. They didn't do any type of grammar check at all. I mean, maybe they did, but it could use a little work. Dianetics Scientology services to its parishioners. There is a management structure, for Scientology. Church is discussed here on the church website, if you want more details. You know, because none of these Scientologists are allowed to explain anything, really. I mean, he's explaining some small things, but they don't let him go too far. The current corporate structure of the church was implemented in 1982 when L. Ron Hubbard donated the trademarks and service marks of Scientology to Religious Technology Center as part of a massive reorganization of the church. Religious Technology Center, or RTC, was then entrusted with the purity and ethical use of Scientology. It was made a separate entity from the mother church itself. It's all about hiding money, you guys. You know that. Church of Scientology, it's my opinion, Church of Scientology International, as well as the various churches, missions, and groups, which would then use Scientology, Dianetics, or other related works of LRH. RTC then specifically grants permission to each individual church of Scientology to use Scientology materials and services. The whole purpose here is to ensure that the technologies of Dianetics, Scientology are used properly. You know, because you guys, they're all, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be mean, but they treat you kind of like trained dogs. It's how they're treating you guys. It's how you're all being treated. And as originally intended, and are not altered, perverted, or otherwise misused. There is a ton more to that story than that, but hopefully this answers your question. 3, how do your beliefs affect your daily life and relationships? I'd say the easiest way to quantify this for me is that my daily life and interpersonal interactions are, by and large, fairly smooth and stress-free. And a lot of that I attribute to work I've done in Scientology. Anytime something good happens, it's always Scientology did it. Communicating with my family, my wife, extended family members, in-laws, friends, etc., is all fairly drama-free. Are they all Scientologists? Inquiring minds want to know. With a distinct lack of grudges, long-running upsets, feuds, etc. As I've got 3 kids, this lack of stress is important to me, as I've often found a direct correlation between home stress and illness. As if kids are around a chaotic household, they tend to get sick more often. Well, LRH sure would know that, wouldn't he? This is hard to read, you guys. Luckily, all 3 of my kids have nearly always been in great health. Are they in the Sea Org right now? Are they doing child labor? They're outdoors a lot and active, and are bright, generally doing well. But a lot of that I've seen incrementally improve, both in myself and my wife, after services we've done at our church. Of course. Couldn't be that you guys are good parents. Couldn't be that, could it? I've detailed some of those online here when talking about one service called the Survival Rundown. Oh, that's wonderful. You guys know Lisa McPherson died when she was doing the introspection rundown? Yeah, police officers, no big deal. Not a problem, just another woman dead. And another here when talking about a communication course we did together. This guy, he definitely is drinking the sauce or taking the sauce. 4, where do you spend the majority of your time studying Scientology? At church or elsewhere? And honestly, I'm going to add in here, like, what other churches do you guys, or mosques, do you ever hear, or temples, do you ever hear about them that people have to study? I know in Sikhism, they have the Granth Sahib, and they have 1 or 2 people that study that, but, like, you have to be quizzed, and then you have to pay money for it? Come on, you guys. Again, where do you spend the majority of your time studying Scientology? At church or elsewhere? This should be good. I'd say it's been about 50-50 at home and at my church. Of course, he doesn't add in there that they're required to do this, right? They have to. They don't have a choice. Makes the Illuminati seem pretty real, doesn't it? There are a number of courses of study, that's indoctrination, which get done exclusively at a church because they require supervision, see? In practical application, which you can't just do on your own. However, there are also a number of books, lectures, which comprise the basics of the Scientology religion. And those I've studied at home most of the time, also doing a mail-in extension course, sending in lessons to my local church. Of course, he doesn't bring up how much it costs. I've done plenty of study just on my own, but I like the lessons as I get to ensure I've gotten all of the main points out of the text and didn't leave things behind. 5. When money is given to advance in Scientology, where does it go? They're trying to tell us that a student is asking this question. The only thing I can figure is this is another Scientologist, because nobody talks like this. Nobody talks like this. Like an outside person's going to understand what they're talking about, given in advance. Come on. There's a short answer and a long answer here. The short answer is that when money is donated to the church, they love to say it's a donation, you guys. And I have to bring up how many stories we've heard about where they lock the doors until somebody makes a donation. Kind of reminds you of the mafia, doesn't it? You can't leave the building till you make a donation. Imagine nobody's doing anything about all this stuff. It's unreal. The short answer is that when money is donated, like when Guido tells you to donate, it goes to the church itself to support it. You know what's sad about all this? They actually believe this stuff. That's the sad part. Keep the doors open, the lights on, and to pay the staff. So they all have to pay each other. Scientology has like billions of dollars. Billions. From child labor, human trafficking. But they still need more. A percentage of it also goes to church management. Oh, there you go. Does this sound like similar to tithing to you guys? There's a pretty extensive white paper here on how church finances work, which is the long answer. You guys know that's a short story. 6, how has auditing positively affected you? More like interrogation. See if he talks about the child auditors, because we know the majority of the auditors over there, the interrogators getting the blackmail material, are children. All against the law, but laws. The broad answer to that is that auditing has, by and large, made me more honest with myself and others. Isn't that great? It's unreal. More generally happy, more stable, because they can't do that for themselves, And more tolerant of having more moving parts and individual things going on in my life that I'm actively working on. I heard stories that Karen De La Care still gives auditing. It's just a rumor that I heard. It's free to hear a rumor. In Scientology, each auditing action that is done has its own specific thing that it is addressing. Like child rape? Does auditing address child rape? Inquiring minds want to know. And an end result in mind for that individual. Like a pedophile? And I'm not accusing this man of that. I'm just bringing up other people that have been accused of that. That's all I'm saying. These are specifically arranged in a sequence of action, which makes sense, building one upon the next. For example, there is an auditing action I referred to above, called the survival rundown. We've all heard of that one. Which is specifically directed toward getting an individual to operate in the here and now, as opposed to having unwanted fixed attention in the past, or unwanted thoughts or feelings. This action has a deep... You see this? What is that little squiggly mark? Oh, it is an and sign. Deep and profound impact on my ability to focus on a given task and take it to completion, as well as being much more in the here and now when dealing with my family and kids. And we're all supposed to believe that L. Ron Hubbard came up with that by himself, right? How many times have we heard people talk about focus on the now? But LRH just stole it from someone else and charged a whole lot of money for it. This is really hard to get through, you guys. There are numerous other specific auditing action I've done, some focused on handling one's ability to communicate with anyone on any subject. Others on being able to recognize the source of life problems, because, children should be asking these questions, right? Especially when the children are, in auditing, asking the grown adults about their masturbation habits. Yeah. Government's fine with all that. The source of life problems and not feel compelled to have problems on being able to be free from the weight of past upsets. You could just take upsets out of there, free from the past. And to be able to get out of fixed, unwanted conditions. That sounds like just change your thought patterns to me. On each one, the effects on my own life have been positive. Of course it did. You can't speak against Scientology. So that's why we always hear the propaganda. And extremely freeing. There are just so many conditions in life that I've seen others be entirely convinced are impossible to change. But I've seen them change in myself and friends within a few weeks. Time. Unless they talk out on Scientology, then you disconnect from them, right? As a result of auditing they did. How much do they have to pay for that? Could just go read a book. Pay $10 for it. I think it's factually pretty amazing. He doesn't have a choice. He has to say these. He probably doesn't believe this, too. And yeah, there might be some benefits, but I don't believe in children auditing grown men or women, asking them sexual questions. And I'm not saying, I'm not going to go too deep. Oh, Lord have mercy. 7. What is your experience with mission trips? Not sure what you're asking here. We're supposed to believe that this is an outside student. It's got to be a Scientology kid. Scientologists don't really have an analog to required missionary work like the Mormon Church does. Though Scientologists do frequently travel on their own something to do volunteer work. Oh, by the way, they got to pay for it too. They got to pay for their way there and back. Multi-billion-dollar corporation can't pay for their travel. Owing to the fact that I do website work, I've done a lot of work over the last 10 to 15 years to coordinate volunteers going to disaster areas, like New Orleans for Hurricane Katrina, to India, Thailand, Banda Aceh, after the Indian Ocean tsunami, and Japan following the tsunamis there, as well as closer to home when we've had flooding and other more minor disasters here. I've also been involved in drug education programs and such, to get materials out to schools. Isn't that great, you guys? Seminars to educate kids, adults about drugs. This is what they believe. If you have other more specific questions on this, let me know. We're all supposed to believe that it's not another Scientologist asking, I think. I don't know. 8. I have heard that Scientologists believe in reincarnation. Is this true? To an extent. It is a key part of the Scientology religion, that people are treated as spiritual individuals, as separate from their mind or their body. This video describes such in more detail, because he's not allowed to go too deep. They got to keep referring to the stupid website, to the stupid video. Sad. I think the saddest part about all this is they just don't know how indoctrinated they are. That's just... And I don't think all of them are pedophiles in that. I don't believe that. Obviously not. But I think a lot of them don't understand that they're propping up a pedophile organization. It's a fact. I don't have to prove anything. All you have to do is just go on the public record of all these children that have been raped LAPD is totally fine with that. But then again, LAPD's they're really into killing people, innocent people out there, so can't say anything against them. They'll shoot you. It's on the public record. That being said, there is not some specific part of Scientology beliefs or scripture that deals in reincarnation, as in, make sure you don't do XYZ or you'll be reincarnated as a toad. Nor is there a particular focus on such as there is in some Buddhist traditions. The main factor is in the orientation of Scientology application to the individual as a spirit, not as his body. 9. Is everything written or spoken by L. Ron Hubbard considered scripture in Scientology? It is not. It's policy, you guys. You gotta be on the policy. Remember when the little boy was getting beaten by Wally Hanks and he kept asking what policy that was under? Because that little boy knew that L. Ron Hubbard policies didn't say exactly to beat the little boy with a paddle. And we need to go back and find out what Wally Hanks had inscribed onto that paddle. So glad he croaked. LRH wrote quite a lot. Did he now? With the basics of the religion comprising 18, you guys. Doesn't 18 consist of 6 by 6 by 6? Huh. Different books and literally hundreds of recorded lectures. Yeah, where he's babbling. As well as thousands of pages of church policy and technical material. Allegedly, it was just LRH writing all this, right? But there is firm dividing line between what comprises the policy of the church and the scripture of Scientology, and what is an individual advice or personal communication aimed only at one individual or to a small group. It came up even in the very early days of Scientology, where he'd make an offhand comment. What about LRH talking about the N-word? Because you know he hated black people, right? Yeah. Why do you think he said people that weren't following Scientology or had a dislike towards Scientology were the WOG word, which is a racial slur in the UK? More mockery. Where he'd make an offhand comment to somebody while visiting a local church, and then come back years later to find that folks had taken this comment entirely out of context, sure. You see the mind control here, you guys? And assumed it was hard policy from then on, applying to everything all the time. So there's even specific policy on what is church policy. I bet Rinder knew. And what is merely information and what's to be disregarded entirely is not relevant to the church at all. 10. What are some of your core values as a Scientologist? Hold on, you guys. Okay, there's a few more points. I'm going to go ahead and read it. 11. Is there a school specifically for people to learn only Scientology that is separate from the traditional school system? You guys know why they're addressing this, because so many people have questions about this. Scientology is a religious philosophy, but it is not and never was intended to be a replacement for a full education. Really? Really now? Clearly, if one wanted to become a Scientology practitioner, now they're a practitioner. Aren't doctors practitioners? They can never make up their mind. They're either workers, which would mean that would imply an employment situation. Parishioners mean that they would be a part of a church. Members, you guys know how I go on about that. And now this time, they're a practitioner. Isn't a practitioner a doctor? One would obviously study such at a church of Scientology and not pursue a theological degree at a traditional school. That being said, there are schools which use the study technology developed by Mr. Hubbard. Of course, he doesn't mention their names, as well as a handful of other relevant works. But the bulk of the education is a diverse and complete curriculum, including mountains of classical and modern literature, chem, math, history, and hands-on learning. I went to such a school in Oregon called the Delphian School. Listen to this, you guys. And it was fantastic. That's where all the children, that's one of the ongoing lawsuits right now, where the children being raped by the basketball coach. Yeah. But it was fantastic, according to this guy. And I feel sorry for him. You never know. He might have been abused too. And I do feel bad for some of these people. I just can't blanket statement that every Scientology parent's like an SOB. I just can't. I can't do that. But I think too many of these parents or guardians or adults are just way too complicit in this child abuse. And they have to be held accountable and responsible. So each family is going to be different. Each family is going to have a different situation. So I can't say every single Scientologist is signing off on sexual abuse, etc. I can't do that. That being said, oh wait, I already read that. 12. What does the symbol of the cross represent? Oh, this should be great. You guys know why they're addressing this. Because the public wants answers. Of course, from the Scientology website, because that's all people can do. It is an 8-pointed cross. You guys know that has occultic references, right? I'm going to go look into it. There's something to it. I can't remember right off the top of my head, but I know it's something. 8-pointed cross representing the 8 parts of dynamics. Right, of course they had to have a cover story of life through which each individual is striving to survive. These parts are the urge toward existence as self. That's the first dynamic. As an individual, which they completely snuff out. They snuff it all the way out and always tell a person that the group comes first, just like Brave New World. The urge to survive through creativity, including the family unit and the rearing of children. That's the second dynamic. He sure glossed over that one, didn't he? The sexual dynamic. I don't need to keep going over it again and again. The urge to survive through a group. There we go. See how they inverted all of it? Of individuals or as a group. The urge towards survival through all mankind. And as all mankind, the urge to survive as life forms. And with the help of life forms, such as animals, birds, insects, fish, and vegetation. The urge to survive of the physical universe. By the physical universe itself, and with the help of the physical universe. And each one of its compound parts. The urge to survive as spiritual beings, or the urge for life itself to survive. The urge toward existence as infinity, also identified as a supreme being, to be able to live in harmony with respect to each of these spheres of existence, is symbolized by the Scientology cross. As a matter of interest, the cross as a symbol predates Christianity. 13. What is the perspective of Christianity in the Church of Scientology? The most relevant writing I can point you at here is L. Ron Hubbard's essay, Religious Influence in Society, which I'd heavily recommend reading in full. Of course you would. As it encompasses the spirit with which we interact with other religions, inclusive of Christianity. Another short story. Specifically, however, I think it's supposed to be almost every Scientologist I know has a deep and profound respect for religious people of all faiths. I don't believe that. I mean, maybe in his everyday life, but I don't think overall, I don't believe that. We may all have different approaches, beliefs, and things we hold dear, but for the most part, the great world religions each have a moral code, which by and large is quite similar religion to religion. Don't even get me started, you guys. And one that is critical, civilizing influence, which is in danger of being totally undermined. I think that a destructive element in today's society over the last 80 years or so has been the introduction of the idea that there's no such thing as right and wrong, and that morality itself is outmoded. I find that I get along much better with anyone that subscribes to a moral code from their religious upbringing than with someone who's got an anything goes, you only live once attitude. Well, and let's just be honest. They tell people when they're coming into Scientology that it's okay if they're a Christian or a Muslim or whatever their religion is, but they don't really believe that. It's only Scientology. That's it. More isolation, honestly. That's what that is. To further answer your question, I know of a lot of people who remain Christian, right? But who are also Scientologists, right? Scientology is all about studying and applying tools for life, at a cost, by the way. Things that make sense to you as such. I know a lot of Christians who have found it quite compatible with their own religious path. 14. What are some common misconceptions of Scientology held by society today? See what they're trying to do? Well, how common the misconception is really depends on where you got your data. I have heard just about every story imaginable from people on the internet professing that they know all about what I believe. We're supposed to believe that, you guys. Some people I've run into have been factually pretty mad about what I apparently do. But the truth has been almost uniformly a lot more mundane than the press makes it. This is one of the reasons I made a website. It's one of the reasons I also write for other publications, including this one. To get the truth out there of what we're about. They sure are trying, aren't they? There's literally no end to the number of stories folks can make up about what I believe. It's so sad to see the mind control. It really is so sad. It's so sad to me. If someone makes up a claim that I believe in evil alien overlords, you guys know, ruling the earth or something, there's no document out there that says definitively and conclusively, here is proof I don't believe in aliens. By the way, I don't believe in evil alien overlords. Either this guy hasn't gotten to that level or he's lying. What is it, OT3, where they find this out? Either he's not to OT3 or he knows about it and he's lying through his teeth. The only thing I can do is A, repeatedly say and demonstrate what I do believe in, and most critically, B, convince you to go down to your local library and read an actual Scientology book. See? Again, always referring to the books or the websites, because they're not allowed to. I mean, he did address some things, but with certain subjects, they don't allow them to address it at all. So you can see what I'm talking about, and if you're in the mood for that, my best recommendation would be to pick up Scientology Fundamentals of Thought. And I think it represents the best cross-section of what I actually believe and do. Anyways, you guys, this was interesting, if anything. I will leave a link in the description box. Like and subscribe if you choose. Otherwise, have an amazing day or night, wherever you are. Peace.